Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my organization, the Inter-African Committee, I would like to welcome you all to this very important gathering with a clear objective of working towards zero tolerance to female genital mutilation. The day is special because we are focusing on a real serious problem that is an actuality of our days. As you know, millions of girls, 2 million a year according to statistics, are being mutilated every year. The most sensitive part of their body is cut. And this in the name of tradition and value to be respected. In this day and age, when human rights principles have proliferated, when gender equality is being recognized as essential for peace and development, it is unacceptable to see a practice like FGM continue to victimize African girls and some others. And this practice, as you know, is gaining areas, territories. We used to think it was Africa that was the continent that was concerned, but now because of human movements, migration, we find it at the doorsteps of Europe, America, Canada, even as far as Japan, Australia and Japan. So it has become a global problem.
I've heard a lot this morning about community mobilization, about community participation. And to my mind, every time I hear that, the flags come up. And I think women being burdened again with volunteerism. I think of women being blamed again. And I heard quite a few of that this morning, except it was modulated a bit by our artist guest, who told us that she really at the end couldn't blame her mother, though she blamed her at the beginning. And I'm just thinking that we have to introduce that word again, patriarchy. Because really, why do women do what they do? And importantly, how they do it. Because a lot of times it's not about why. I mean, they do it, they want to preserve the honor of their children, but how they do it is really the issue of genital mutilation that we are talking about. And why they do it is about also what the society expects them to do. And this is all driven by patriarchy. The second point that comes to my mind with regards to this is the whole issue about the media messages. And media messages not perpetuating gender inequality in their content, in the words, in the graphics that is used. A lot of times when we go into countries and examine policies and things, even informational materials, we see pictures, even in very well-intentioned campaigns, that are still giving the same old roles to women, that are still subtly blaming women for things that are happening. I'll give you an example. In immunization campaigns, oftentimes you only see the mother, and it talks about immunization is good for your children, as if it's just the responsibility of the mother, which translates to, okay, if my child is not immunized, I'm a bad mother. So I mean, there are some ways that the media messages, the content, the graphics that are used can perpetuate gender inequality. So I want to go back again, but that has changed. I think UNICEF is trying to, that has changed. Now you see pictures of immunization with fathers also. And I'm just throwing a challenge to our colleagues that are going to be now revamping their efforts at scaling up efforts at abandonment of FGM, to be mindful of this at the back of our minds. Another thing I wanted to, just to categorize the points I was making, I was asked to make as a discussant, it's about bridges. Let us examine the characteristics of bridges. over the weekend I was in a country near a very famous airport, and I was really amazed for the first time to see on the back roads signs that said Weak Bridge. I saw about 3 around Heathrow Terminal 5 in the back roads. Of course, we often don't go that way, we just get dropped at the gate. But I was fortunate to see this, and I just thought of this session. Of course, there are strong bridges and there are weak bridges. I was just thinking, why were those termed weak bridges? Because they were temporary. Because you could see it was during the construction of the Terminal 5. They have been abandoned already. And it says weak bridge, so nobody else wants to go over them again. And so we know there are weak bridges and there are strong bridges. And it's not about the technology alone that makes them weak or strong. Because there are bamboo bridges that are stronger than some of the bridges made of iron that are not properly joined. You know about the big bridge that collapsed in Minnesota a few years ago. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say as we are building bridges, they need to be strong, and it's not about all the technical information around them that makes them strong. Strong is also about what they are made of. Bridges take a long time to build. We've heard that a lot of times this morning. And my third point about bridges is bridges that don't meet in the middle are no bridges at all. We've heard this morning how researchers are starting to build a bridge, and then people that are in the programming and policy end start to build their bridges, and they don't really meet in the middle, and so it's difficult to call it a bridge. It's a structure of sorts. And I dare say if we examine a lot of the things we do, we'll find that some of them that try to build bridges really don't end up being bridges. So finally, what bridges do we need to build or reinforce? Reinforcing existing bridges. We heard about research. We heard a lot about how research needs to be bridged with policies and programs, especially with advocacy. We heard about new trends in data that is now coming up, especially from what Elise just told us, that even though we have not purposely looked to articulate it in that way, they're actually seeing some changes, some downward trends in some countries, and some upward trends in others. What does that mean? So research into policies and programs is not just about publishing them, it's about also finding out what does this research mean. And I think that's a challenge for research in general, but especially for this field, where there's really a lot of things that still need to be researched upon. We heard about the good work of the donor working group that has tried to put the FGM work in a broader basket of things, in a broader ship that is moving fast, with the SG campaign on violence against women. And that is a very happening thing. However, when you put things in a big basket, of course there are risks involved, and I think many of us here who have worked in policies and programs for years know what those risks are. And as we go forward with this issue, we will try and be mindful of those. Another bridge that I would like to talk about is about activist to activist bridge. We heard today about a lot of good work going on, but I didn't hear a lot about men. There is a group of men now called Men Engage Alliance that really one of their themes is to work on violence against women, men against rape, men against this and that. I work very closely with them by virtue of my work in WHO. I have not had much said about them doing anything on female genital mutilation. This is a way to get this into their violence against women basket as something that they could also work on, especially the ones in the West, I mean the global North. Again, we heard about the bridge of good practice and scaling up. And I hear a lot about good practice can flow from Africa to the developed countries, to the more developed countries on this particular issue, and probably on other issues that pertain to immigrant populations. That's a bridge. And then finally, there's a bridge about surveillance, data, indicators. That could be termed under the research, but again, there's an aspect of it that is dealing with programming as well, because it's, data is not all about research data. It's also about data that is generated by all those health workers in all those clinics and all those people that are working in NGOs. How do we capture that data and how can we use it on this issue and other issues, especially the violence against women issue, in which this is now being also put on. And finally, about the challenges. We've used the word gender inequality a lot this morning, gender-based discrimination and so on. And perhaps the reason why traditional practices that are really based on gender inequality last for so long, besides patriarchy, is the fact that they are so well-intentioned. A lot of discriminatory practices are well-intentioned, and it takes some form of analysis to be able to isolate the fact that, hey, this is a discriminatory. You know, we want to protect the girls, we want to protect the women from this, from that. Who's protecting who, and for what purpose? And I would just like to close with a quote from Paulo Freire, who's one of my heroes, really, because I would term him one of the fathers of working with the community. And he says, one cannot expect positive results from an educational political action program which fails to respect the particular view of the world held by the people. And I must say, in the FGM community, we are respecting the views of the people, maybe not enough, in that their involvement in some of the things that we are doing could be better still. Such a program constitutes cultural invasion, good intentions notwithstanding. We should, let's keep this in our mind as we invigorate ourselves today, 2011, Day of Zero Tolerance.
Good morning. My name is Nafissatou Diop. I'm the coordinator of the UNFPA UNICEF Joint Program on Female Genital Mutilation Cutting. And this is a program that have started in 2008, which is has the goal to cover 17 priority countries in Africa, and those countries have been selected based on the high prevalence rates of female genital mutilation cutting, and also on some criteria regarding the ethnicity, because we know that beyond country boundaries there is an issue of ethnic group, and some are practicing while others are not practicing female genital mutilation cutting. So the approach that we need to have goes beyond looking at the issue within a country, but looking at it within a region or within a sub-region, and within some ethnic group. So what I can say is that today we have made a lot of progress, even if there is still a lot of things to do, but a lot of progress because basically we have almost 20 countries in Africa that have passed law, specific law forbidding the practice of female genital mutilation cutting. So, so I think that we need to recognize some political will and the role of parliamentarians in addressing this issue and eliminating this issue in Africa. However, I will say yes and no. Yes, because I think that we have a lot of, first of all, a lot of governments that are now taking some ownership, even to coordinate the response at country level. As I was mentioning, the law that have been passed in the majority of countries in Africa. There is still some countries that do not have a law yet, but another issue also that we can say which is positive is that we understood that there is, by working with the communities themselves and by working with leaders, we can really move forward and have the ownership of the abandonment of the practice by the communities themselves. So this is something that is starting. It's a movement that have started in several countries with a lot of public declaration of abandonment of female genital mutilation cutting. We have a lot of local leaders and religious leaders that are taking some stance against the practice. and we think that all those elements are very positive. We have the international community that have recognized also that the practice is need to be eliminated. We have a resolution in 2009 taken by the United Nations and all the member states on the girl child, with a very strong position on the elimination of female genital mutilation cutting. We have the CSW, which is the Commission for the Women's Status, that has taken a resolution last year also on female genital mutilation cutting, calling all the countries to not only African countries but also European countries, or wherever the practice is done today, even in migrant communities, to address this issue and to report on a regular basis on the progress made. So those are achievements. In terms of what are the challenges? Of course, there is still a lot of challenges, and I think that one of the first challenges that we are facing is funding issue, and we need to recognize that the investment that is being done in other issue like HIV/AIDS, like maternal mortality and immunization of the child and all, are not really reaching. I mean, the investment that is done in female genital mutilation cutting is not at the level of this kind of investment that is done in other issues. And so we do think that this issue need to be taken more seriously. And that more investment needs to be done, because basically NGOs, government and all, in the plan of action and what they want to do, there is a need, of course, to support activities, to support human resource, and to support the intervention that have been taken in Africa and overall.
Thank you very much.
If I had the power to change, I would give the young women the opportunity to speak to power, to explain how they suffer through this process.
Okay, one very important message I will take back to Lucerne, to Caritas Switzerland, is that building bridges between Europe and the African countries, that means an exchange and not only a one-way information. So that means that we can learn from the youth, from the adults, from the different organizations, from the African countries, bring this information and this knowledge here to Switzerland, and on the other side we have something to share, something else to share, and bring it back to Africa. That is one thing which is very, very important for me, and I think we have to reinforce this exchange. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to suggest that a fund is being set up for the women who do the excision to have an income until the end of their days, with the promise they make to not initiate some other young women to continue this practice. And maybe the governments, especially those 12 governments that already have legislation to end the female genital mutilation, that they could create a fund because it is also their income, to have an alternative income for these women, and in this way the promise to end this practice in one generation could be achieved. Thank you.